You'll never believe that I spent literally the last 5 minutes trying to get this ring light to cooperate with me. I told myself that I would try and do this whole keep the videos below 10-minute thing, but then I realized that just being conscious about like not talking too much, not talking for too long, would like kept me from discussing a lot of themes and stuff. Like in some of my more recent videos, I felt like I wasn't able to go into a lot of the nuance and stuff that I wanted. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, my name is Ofente and I am your book bae. Your book bae is in the building, ready to drop some knowledge on. And this week I'm reviewing Trevor Noah's Born a Crime and Other Stories. Like, my favorite thing about this book is that it was so sincere. It was sincere, and also I learned a lot. Like, I'm a South African and I know quite a lot about apartheid and how it affected people, black people, different actually racial groups in its different ways, and you know how cleverly it was constructed. But after reading this and actually getting a first-hand account of a lot of the atrocities that took place during that time, I was given a different understanding of a lot of things, like a more weighty understanding. So those are my top two things about this book. It was sincere, and also it, like, I learned a lot. And it didn't feel like I was learning like, okay, these are the facts. It was really like, okay, well, this is my experience, and just like giving the color around that. And I think that's great for international audiences or people who are not necessarily familiar with the history surrounding the apartheid regime in that time in South Africa before democracy. But yeah, I really like this book, and I've always really been a fan of Trevor Noah. Watching his climb from being like this comedian to just elevating in his career up until he got the gig at The Daily Show, which he's been doing super well in. So shout out to Trevor for that. I remember a couple of months ago, I'm not sure if it was last year or the beginning of 2020, but I think it was last year, when he had Black Coffee on the show and South Africa just went crazy. Like, he was trending on Twitter, and it was just like, here are these men who have just elevated and just become so successful on the international stage, South African, you know. So a lot of people were very proud of him due to his success. And after reading this book, I think I appreciate him more like as a public figure, because I also understand like everything that it took for him to get to that level. And by now, you know, I know a lot of people used to like tease me on social media, like when I did my vlog, about how I love autobiographies. I really do, because I really like to understand people, just knowing everything. It's hilarious. The book is funny, and I'm the type of person, like, my humor is, I don't just like, I will watch something or a video or something and be like, oh, that's funny. Like, I know it's funny, but I won't always necessarily laugh. You know that thing when you send someone a text message and you're like, lol, but you're not actually lolling, you're like, lol. That's me. Like, I'll watch a movie, and sometimes I also wouldn't like necessarily going to movies and watching comedies because I feel like that's not that funny. But he's actually one person that I actually have always found funny, and this book is just a testament to that. The book, the structure of the book, I think it ties into that, right? It's just different stories that build together. There's no linear timeline. Like, often he'll tell the story and then later on he'll tell a story that links to the story that he told previously. So it's just sporadic. It's kind of like you're literally having a conversation with him, and he's just recalling these things that happened in his life. Like, okay, yeah, when this happened, or remember that story that I told you about this, well, this links to that type of thing. Like, you feel like you're having a conversation. I feel like Trevor's my #1 homie. I know everything about him. We grew up together. I loved that. Like, at the end, right, I think that you can kind of piece everything together in your own, like, kind of create a timeline in your mind. But I think that the point of the way that it's written is that the timeline is not important. It's the stories, it's the little anecdotes that he learned. He'll talk about how his matric dance was like this, and then he'll talk about his childhood when his mom was dating her ex-husband. Then he'll talk about teenagers were like this, and this. So that was something that was really well done and interesting. I think it helped me me, keep my attention, because I think sometimes those linear storylines are a little bit boring sometimes. So that was a really good call on this. He goes from just being a young boy, he talks about his childhood from when he was born, how he was born, the relationship that his mom and dad had, having a white dad and a black mom, and what that meant for him, how his dad really did want to be a part of his life and know him. And his mom always speaks about how your dad chose you, he wanted to know about you, which was very powerful, I think, for a black man growing up in that time specifically, where a lot of fathers were absent due to work and things that they couldn't necessarily control. So just to have that father figure, like even if he wasn't able to be a consistent like wake up, he's there figure in his life, but just knowing that my father did want me, it's just the circumstance. If things were different, things would have been different, right? Just grappling with his identity as a colored man in South Africa, that, you know, he wasn't like white enough for the white kids, but then, you know, the black kids are always kind of like, you know, what are you doing here? But that's how he identifies as, right, a black man. And he spoke about how language is this way to bridge that divide. So the moment that he would walk into a space and he would be the only colored man there, surrounded by all these black people, then it would be a thing of like, what are you doing here? But then the minute he starts speaking vernacular languages, that's isiZulu, anything really, is Xhosa, he's there, he's within, everyone's like, okay, we accept you. Identity. That was a major theme in this book, and he did it well. I think things are always more weighty when you understand them, like you experience them and then you grow and you learn about the nuance, like what actually things mean, because then you can piece them together with your understanding. So there was definitely that in this book, and in his life now where he stands, he's able to be like, okay, I went through that, now knowing what I know, what did that mean for me as a child growing up in this space and not necessarily knowing where I fit in? Why was it like this? Was it the structure? Was it my internal, like the way I viewed things? It's something that I appreciated. I definitely have had my fair share of just like being not really sure. I think it's something that all people go through though, like just not being sure of where you fit in sometimes in the bigger scheme of things. I like that he was not afraid to discuss how a lot of the time he felt like he just didn't have a place where he belonged. He just felt like, oh, I'm not really sure, but I'll just make the best with what I've got. I'll navigate this space and make it work for me. And that's something that I appreciated, and a life skill I think that everybody can benefit from. He was also very candid. Like I don't think he ever really like skirted around certain issues. He was like, this was it, matter of fact, and that's how my life was. I grew up like this, we struggled at this point, but my mom always did this for me. I think my favorite character in the book would be Trevor's mom. She is amazing. I don't want to talk about this thing of being like, oh, she was a strong woman, that type of thing, but she really was a remarkable human being, an amazing parent. And he said during that time, like the apartheid regime or whatever, like black people were restricted, like this is what you could do. Everybody was restricted, arguably in different degrees and things, but particularly now I'm talking about the black experience, right? He identifies as a black man, he grew up in a black family. He spoke about how his mom would expose him to different things. She would take him to the park, she would do all these things that were associated with being, you know, oh, like that type of vibe. So it's white people things. My viewers at home who don't understand that, but yeah, white people things. And his mom never had that, you know. She was like, this is what I want to do, I want to expose my child to different things, I want to lead him and see beyond that, to see beyond like what's in front of him, because to see the world doesn't end here, or wherever, you know, you grew up, whether it's the suburbs, whether it's wherever. Just like that type of parenting where this is how we grew up, yes, but I want you to see how other people live and know that this is possible for you. Her parenting was very like, I'm clicking my fingers now because I'm thinking about how in the book he spoke about even like with hardships and things that they dealt with. He said that they moved forward and they moved fast. So just this thing of like, move it or lose it. And I think that's something that is a great way to look at life. I realize now, like dwelling, just being the type of person that broods and whatever doesn't help anything. So just having that instilled in you as a child was I think something that also benefited him. This is my younger brother's book. He read it, and then he, you know, I was like, okay, let me read it, like let me get my hands on it. I would recommend this book for anybody who wants to know more about Trevor Noah. Also anybody who would like to understand a little bit more about life during apartheid from like the colored experience. Trevor spoke about was this idea of passing. Every racial group was put against each other and blamed. Like in the colored experience, it was almost this thing of like always wanting to be white, because it was like, you're not black, so you're almost there, like you have more perks than black people do in this structure, in this government, but you still have that side of you that's black. He used to get bullied by the kids in his neighborhood who were colored, and he didn't necessarily speak Afrikaans, so there was that tension, like, oh, okay, where do you fit in? Like, you look like us, but you don't act like us. If you look a certain way and you don't identify the group, like you don't do the things that the group do, it's almost an attack, because it's like, okay, but then we're like this and you look like us, but you're not like this. Why? Why aren't you like this? If I'm a black girl and I expect black girls to act a certain way, and then you come into this space and you're not acting like how I would expect you to act, now I'm feeling like, oh, why aren't you like us? Like, it's interesting. I don't feel that way personally. I'm not like that, but easy to be like that. Like, just that mob side can take over, and I definitely don't blame anybody for that, because how different people identify with their identity is up to them. But yes, definitely a big theme in the book. Identity, culture. He refers to himself not as colored but as mixed, because he has a black mom and a white father. What else? Love. Oh, that was cute. Oh, I have a crush. What now? What do I do? That primary school thing. So that was really cute. And then what else? Something that I really wanted to touch on was the character of his stepfather, Abel. I had this discussion with my younger brother yesterday after finishing the book, and he was like, no, he just felt like the character of Abel, he was just evil and stuff like that. But I kind of like I understand. Like, I think that Abel was a product of his environment. He was born into a system that just did not favor black people. Also, I think culturally, patriarchy plays a big role in a lot of things, like this just idea of being overly traditional and just understanding that people live differently. So if I grow up in a certain environment, I'm going to be a product of that environment, and I get to a stage in my life when I decide, okay, I don't want to be like that, like I'm gonna be different. You have that moment when you're like, okay, I decide to be this type of person. So with Abel, I think it was just like overwhelming. Things were just stacked up against him. Things were not going well. He suffered from alcoholism, and instead of realizing that, you know what, I might be the reason for some of these things and life not going the way I wanted it to, he wanted someone to blame, and it was easy for him to blame Trevor's mom, which is why he ended up shooting her. You know, she survived, thank God. I won't go too much into that. I definitely would recommend this for any and everyone. I think it's understandable. I also think it has crossover value, right? So you don't have to be a black woman to enjoy this book. I think it's for anyone who wants to laugh and just understand Trevor Noah more, point blank period. I was thinking about it this morning that I really want a sequel. Like, I'm ready right now. I'm ready for the sequel for this book, because it was everything and more. It's a coming of age story. It's Trevor Noah as a kid growing up, a young man, as a colored man in apartheid, navigating different spaces, just such a naughty kid. And I thought also, like, if me and Trevor were friends as kids, I think we would have gotten along, because as a child, I used to do the most. Me, my brothers and my cousins, we were just a mess. But like, the thing about me was I was naughty at home, but then I was good at school. So I picked my my battles, I guess. Yes, I know that I still need to give the review for the 5 AM Club. TBH, I have not finished it yet. I don't know what, like, I had a wall, and then I was like, Trevor, but now I'm back. I'm definitely gonna finish that and provide you with some quality content as always. Please do remember to like, comment and subscribe, share. Let me know, are you interested in reading this book? Local authors doing big things. Side note, I really want a sequel. Like, Trevor, please, if you watch this video, I'm a big fan. please, we need a sequel, because now I think that this was all about him before his career took off, like before he became Trevor Noah the comedian. That he discusses it briefly, but he doesn't go into that. It was always about like before fame, I guess. So please, Trevor, like, I'm ready now for the sequel. Let us know, what is life like at the Daily Show? Like, you know, you're this big superstar, international, like, we want to know. And that's me for this week though. Bye for now.